Hey, well, welcome to another coach video tip. My name's Dan Foster. I am the Chief Operating Officer and an executive coach here at Building Champions. And today I am excited to speak with one of my favorites, Executive Coach Genena Armstrong. Genena, hello and welcome.
Dan, thank you. You're one of my favorites as well. I always say that, but don't tell anybody.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Thank you
Well,
for having me.
yeah, absolutely. You bet. I always love when I get a chance to speak with you informally, but also formally, like this, where we're recording a video tip for our clients and the people that follow us. So today we're going to be talking about just this essential element of self-leadership, which is your social well-being. And Janina, I love this topic for us because you and I are high eyes on the disc. And so being social is like what we're all about. We love it. And so let me
Exactly.
let me maybe set the stage for the people that are watching. Social well-being is all about just being positive, having authentic relationships that really support you, provide a sense of belonging for you, and just a sense of connection that you have to other people. And so for leaders, a really strong foundation in social well-being is essential because it brings resilience to your leadership, trust, and just helps you to collaborate better with your team. So they're all essential things for our self-leadership, but also our team leadership.
Right.
So
Agree.
today, I'm hoping we can dive deeper into this whole idea of social well-being and the impact that it has on leaders on a daily basis and just why it's so essential for their success. Does that sound good?
Yeah, it does. It really does. Yeah.
Great,
And
great.
and
Okay.
yeah.
Well, then let's talk just a little bit here. I'll ask you a few questions. So, why do you believe, Janina, that social well-being is so important for leaders, and how does it really impact for themselves as well as for team and culture and all of that?
Yeah. Well, as you know, we posted a blog post last
Ah,
week, and I truly believe what we shared in our blog post. Research reveals that loneliness is just as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
that's crazy, isn't it?
I
Oh
did
my
not know
gosh.
that until
Yeah.
yeah, until then. And so
Yeah.
social engagement is important to everyone, not just
Yes.
leaders, right? And when we
Yep.
think of well-being, we tend to overlook the social aspect.
Yeah.
At least in America's workforce, being social is like a luxury and
Mhm.
something of like a last priority, or
Yep.
when we're forced to, or if we have time, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's easy to cancel plans with friends in favor of working late, or not even to accept the invitation in the first place because we're too
Yep.
busy.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about self-leadership at Building Champions. We often tell our leaders that self-leadership precedes leading others.
Yes.
So, well, a part of leading yourself well is to make sure you're focused on your overall well-being,
Hmm.
and a part of your overall well-being is your social well-being.
Yes. Yeah.
So the benefits of social well-being for a leader are just healthier relationships, better emotional intelligence. Your team feels more supported and accepted, and a sense of belonging
Yep.
because they know you care and that you're spending time cultivating those relationships with
Yeah.
them.
That's great. And I love what you said there because I'm guilty of this where, I have my to-do list at work and I'm in appointments, I'm checking off things, and then I have a tendency to then move from work to-do list to personal to-do list. And it never, like I could just end up spending time doing my honey-do list of
Uh,
projects around the house, and then I don't have that interaction. Like I don't maybe don't take time to connect with Sarah or connect with friends, neighbors, things like that. And I
yeah.
think that's what I heard you say is that we can
Yes.
sometimes in American culture and American business culture, we can focus too much on the activity of getting things done, checking things off, rather than prioritizing those relationships. Is that right?
That's exactly what I meant.
Yeah.
And you have to be intentional. You just do. And it's
Yep.
a shame that that's the case. I mean, social well-being is supposed to be fun, but
Right. Exactly.
it's crazy what we do
Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about maybe how you have seen maybe some examples from your work as you're coaching leaders where just strong social well-being has really made a difference in their effectiveness and with their teams and the relationships that they have with others at work.
Yeah, sure. I had one client who I adore. She's a great leader. I mean, she gets the results. She has great organizational skills, great reputation in her organization, and everybody knows that she's going to get the job done, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, guess what? Her engagement scores were not where she wanted them to be. So
Ah,
she and I developed a plan to increase her I
yes. Uh-huh.
communication style and then just spend more time with her team. And so she committed to it. She was
Yeah.
intentional. And by next year's engagement survey, she had not only positively increased her engagement scores, but she also felt better about herself as a leader.
That's great.
And yeah, and then she recognized that it didn't require as much time as she thought
Yep.
focus on our team's well-being, and then it like inadvertently increased her own social well-being,
Yeah,
so at the
exactly.
same time. So yeah, so she would be a great example of a
Love
leader
that.
who, is great leader, right?
Yes.
Just maybe neglecting that aspect of
Yes.
self-leadership.
Yeah, it reminds me of one of our principles here at Building Champions, which is that your leadership effectiveness will be determined by really just two things: the
Mhm.
decisions you make and the
Yep.
influence that you have on others. And you helped her with that influence
Right.
piece. So I
Yeah.
love that you were intentional with her about that. And you're right, it sometimes requires some of us that are very driven individuals, action oriented, goal oriented, to realize that we actually can be more effective when we have that really good social well-being.
Mhm.
And it sounded like her confidence in herself even increased as you were coaching with her. So that's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. She was so proud of herself. She was,
That's great.
I'm so excited. Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good. Okay, so now let's kind of flip the coin just a little bit. So conversely, what kinds of challenges do you see when leaders don't focus on their social well-being and maybe where it's lacking? How do you see it impact themselves and the team and even the organization?
Yeah, so if I think about that, let's think about Ebenezer Scrooge. We're coming
Yes,
up on the holiday
that's
season,
right.
right? And you know the story. Ebenezer
Yeah.
was a mean old businessman, and he had one employee, Bob Cratchit, which is
Yeah.
Tiny Tim's dad, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And he always frowned upon him and yelled at him. And, he gave Bob, I think it was like one little light to do his work and one piece
Yes.
of
Uh-huh.
coal to stay warm and all that. And, so it was only after the ghost visited him that he decided, Christmas morning, that he had a change of heart.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
and so he ended up a new person
Yeah.
after,
Yeah.
right? Albeit it was Christmas morning, he visited and spent time with his nephew and his nephew's family. He went to Bob Cratchit's family, and his entire demeanor changed,
That's right. And people
right?
were
And
shocked, right?
yes, they were shocked, and then they were like, "Who is this person?" Remember?
Mhm.
They were like,
Yeah.
"He doesn't even. Is that your uncle?" Right? And
Yeah.
so, he was spending time socializing with the people he loved.
Yeah.
And similarly, but not as drastic, if we're not careful, we could become like Scrooge
Yeah.
and working for the almighty dollar and never spending quality time with our family. Think of the impact that that would have
Yes.
on us, and just over time, what that
Yeah.
would look like. So, I think about executive presence, like how
Mhm.
we show up.
Yep.
And I dare say that even changed his age, right? Because he looked younger and he was
Right.
more
Right.
vibrant and that kind of thing. And so yeah, it's all about how you're
Yeah.
showing up. And if you don't, people will not think that you're approachable.
Right.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's really shifting your perspective almost to realizing that people are not a means to an end. It's like they're there to help you and you're there to help them. And when you have that relationship, that high trust relationship, you take the time for it, then you get to know each other. You feel that sense of belonging, like we were talking about. And I've seen it with leaders, and probably when you were coaching that leader that you shared, their team production probably went up, right? Because all of a sudden they're like, oh, I actually enjoy working for her. And, when
Yeah,
Bob Cratchit went to work the next day, he probably thought, I don't mind
yes,
working for Scrooge, or something like that. So,
exactly.
yeah, I think we do see that productivity go up when people feel like they have that
Mhm,
connection with one
mhm.
another.
Yeah, yeah,
All
for
right,
sure.
so let's drive to action here. If
Okay.
somebody's listening and they're like, man, okay, what can I do? Because everything you talked about, I'm leaning a little bit more towards Scrooge here. So, what can I do to improve my social well being, strengthen it? Are there any good, like, best practices that you can share with us?
Yeah, I first want to acknowledge, though, Dan, that this can be a really hard concept to grasp for some people.
Yeah.
And I say that because you have to believe in the benefits of the social well-being. And
Yeah.
so I would say the first step would be admission and awareness.
Yes.
That's self-awareness, right? When we talk
Yep.
about it, you have to admit that this is an area where you struggle,
Yeah.
period. And don't give into the cliche of, well, I'm an introvert, right? And I can't do this. This is not
Yes.
my jam or whatever. And that's just not true. It's just not, because it may take a little bit more energy for introverts to
Hmm.
come around, but if you're intentional, then you'll don't, I mentioned that earlier, you'll reap
Yeah.
the benefits. Yeah.
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 So true. My wife is an introvert, and oftentimes it's me saying, "Hey, let's go out. Let's go to dinner with so and so, or let's go to coffee with so and so."
Mhm.
And her first response, and I love this about her because she keeps me from being all over the place all the
Right.
time, is, she helps me to know that it's time to relax
Yeah.
sometimes and be alone. But I then, on the flip side, help her to be more social. And
Yeah.
whenever we leave someone's house, she's like, that was good. Thanks for encouraging us to do that. And I think that's what introverts, they don't have to be as, out there as you and I might be as
Yeah.
extroverts, right? But it is good to remind ourselves that we need that relational connection time with people. So,
We really do. And I would say, secondly, just start with a couple of small activities.
yeah.
For example, calendar 30 minutes a week to just walk around. We do
Yep.
coffee chats once a
Yes.
month.
Uh-huh.
That's like social, right?
Yes, totally.
And it doesn't have to be, if you're not in person, you could still do FaceTime, right?
Yes.
And just have that time with each other. So just really giving it some thought and
Yeah.
making sure that, and if you can't, if that's an issue for you, there's always coaching, right?
Yes.
And so, if you need more guidance and accountability, you can work with your coach to navigate through
Yeah.
those steps. Hmm.
That's great. I love that. It being intentional, it almost, I remember when I was working on this and it felt almost like, you mean I should calendar this? Like put it in my
Hmm.
calendar to check in on people? And that actually felt a little weird for me because I'm more of that spontaneous, like, hey, let's just connect. But it's so important because while I'm also spontaneous, I'm also driven to achieve things. And if I don't put it on my calendar, it's not going to happen. And so yeah, I think you're so right there. It starts with that belief and then being intentional with setting aside just the little bit of time to do it each week. So that's great. So,
Yeah, and it's not inauthentic either.
right,
Oh,
exactly.
people think you have to plan it, so it's not real. No, it's just that you are making time for it. That's it. Like you make time for everything else.
That's right. Exactly. Good.
Yeah.
All right. So, anything else, Janina, that you can think of from a best practice standpoint in terms of improving social well being for leaders?
Yeah, I would just say brainstorm. Get
Yeah,
some ideas from your peers.
there you go.
Ask a peer that may be an eye on the disc,
Yes. Uh-huh.
the things, or get some thoughts about how you can change or have these activities around your personality.
Love it. Love
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I would say that.
Well, Janina, thank you so much for taking time today to speak with me on this. Folks, if you're sitting here and you're like, man, I need help in this area, reach out to us. Janina is taking clients right now. And as you can tell, she is someone who thrives in the area of social well-being. And she can give you some great best practices and coach you through that. Because it's so important for leaders to have this part of their self leadership dialed in because it directly impacts how they show up and lead their teams. So, if you're watching and you want to learn more about Janina, check us out at buildingchampions.com. You can also connect with her on LinkedIn as well. And
Mhm.
Janina, I just got to say thank you again for being here. It's been great talking with you.
Same to you, Dan. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Take care.